everybody. Welcome to Mission Sports TV. This is The Locker Room. I'm Dave DeRocher and always joined by my friend, Tim Vizzi. How are you, Tim?
My man, it is good to see your face. How we doing?
Doing well. We took a couple weeks off. I know we both have lives and businesses and things, and sometimes it goes like that. But it's great to be back. I think you folks are going to dig our guest, Brian Covey. He's the regional VP for Lone Depot and professional soccer player. He's a cool cat, and he discussed so many things that are relevant and pertinent to what we're trying to do and bring a message to young people. And one of the things that resonated with Tim and I was the fact that he was able to have a solid foundation and beliefs and values, and he was able to kind of fall back to those and rely on them. That got him through a lot of what could be possible pitfalls, right?
Right. I mean, whenever he was faced with decisions, he would filter it, on that foundation, on that rock that he had. And if it didn't align with his values, then, it was a no. And he moved past it and blocked out the distractions. And you can see with the success that he's had and at every single stage, really, from high school to college to pro to now in business, how that's really paid off and helped him be successful.
And maybe it's a soccer thing, maybe it's a goalie thing, but our first soccer guest was Ryan Campbell a few weeks ago, and man, it was just like the male version. I mean, it was same roles, same success, same high level of play, and but then also the same message of core values. And
right.
And I shared this with Ryan, and that was Dr. Betty Uribe's book, #Values. And young people, the younger you learn those, the younger you can identify with what your values are, that you can then have that inner peace, inner strength to rely on those to carry you through in your decision-making process, right? The other thing that he touched on, which we've heard from a number of our guests, is surround yourself with the people that are going to support you through those things, like-minded people. I know that's a big thing that you talk to your young people about, right?
Absolutely. Especially in this day and age, right? With so many distractions and so many outside influences, you got to make sure your values are strong, that you know where you stand, and the people around you where they stand. You're going to become who you hang out with, right? What you're listening to, who you're hanging out with on a daily basis. So make sure you're choosing that wisely, because time flies and you don't want to look back, and you could go one of two ways down the path. You want to make sure you're going the right way towards the destiny that you want to go.
That's it. All right, so we're going to take our quick break, show you a little bit of clip about the kids we have that we're working with. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can follow us, and we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back into the locker room. We are now joined by our guest. Tim, will you please introduce him?
Yes, our guest. He was selected back when to the U-17 Olympic team. He also played for the U-23 National Olympic team. 3 state championships in high school, earned MVP honors as a senior, went on to play at the University of Memphis, where he was team captain for the last 2 seasons, set a bunch of school records, went on to the next step, was drafted by the Nashville Metros. After that, comes full circle, goes back to coaching. Now he's currently married with 3 kids and is the regional VP of Lone Depot. Brian Covey, welcome to the show, brother.
Man, thank you guys. That was a cool intro.
Yeah,
takes me back down memory lane.
Almost like we practiced it.
Right.
And if you see any of the shows, it's why Tim does them. Because first of all, I'd have to put glasses on. Second of all, I'd stumble my way through it. I got the young articulate guys to do your guests right.
He crushed it.
Yeah. Hey, so let's get into it, Brian. And as I mentioned, what we like to find out from all of our guests, especially the ones that are a little bit older, is what role did sports play for you growing up, and faith was that part of your life as well?
Yeah, so I think they probably went together more than separate. But then at parts, I can look back and go, maybe they were separate. But I was very fortunate. It all starts with my mom and dad. I was very blessed. They're still married and played a big role. My dad was actually a pastor, and he's a Christian psychologist. So he was one of my first coaches. I was fortunate enough to have Kyle Rote Jr., if you know, in the soccer world, played with Pele and some others. And when I was at Christ Methodist Day Schools, where my elementary was, I was kind of introduced to faith, but at the same time interwove sports in. So soccer for me from an early age was just what we did. My older brother was 5 years older. And so when we went out and we would do things, I would just be the younger brother showing up to his games. And I loved soccer from an early age, played a little bit of basketball, got into a little bit of football, but I would tell you guys, like, soccer for me is what paved the way, not only to get my education, but then helped me meet friends. And then with like FCA, Fellowship Christian Athletes and all, I had some really good mentors and teachers that would invite me in. And I didn't really come to faith until I was 18, but I was always around people that guided me. And I knew, who Jesus was. I knew kind of Bible stories, but my own actual kind of rebirth wasn't until later, until I could kind of grasp everything. I was a slow learner. But I would attribute my parents, man, they busted it. Both of them worked extremely hard, but always made sure faith was a part of everything we did. And so as I look back on that, that's a foundation for me, and sports and coaches and just learning confidence and commitment, dedication. That to me today are just core values that hopefully as a dad and, as a husband that I'm able to live out and model for others.
Gosh, man, I'm a younger brother too. So going and hanging out with the older bros and playing up, and it really elevates your game first and foremost. And they get to teach you all the things that they wish they knew when they were that young. So that's so cool. It sounds like you just had a constructive environment from an early age that really helped shape you in every single facet, from at home to on the sports. And I think it's so cool that you played multiple sports too. I think that's one thing in this day and age that people get so focused on one, where, it really helps you develop your game in different facets and different areas.
100%. I think I look back to basketball, then prepared me later I was always in soccer, playing multiple positions on the field. It was wherever you could find a spot, and then when I started doing travel ball and competitive, but later, probably about 13 or 14, I found my way and started drifting towards this goalkeeper position, which good field player. At that point, I could catch the ball well. Basketball, I say 100% taught me just the mobility, the ability to read the ball and the speed and everything together. And it played well, just from a standpoint of that quick acceleration as a goalkeeper. You got to come off your line. You got to back up. You got to be able to jump. It's almost like you're going for a rebound for a cross in soccer, and the timing of all that. But yeah, being a younger brother, man, I look back and like, I was blessed, because it's like, you're just around it and you don't know any different. You just show up to the field. Like
Right.
there were no iPads. There were no distractions.
It's tough when you are the younger brother at that age, because you're getting beat up constantly. You're like, gosh, I'm just taking a beat down right now. But then you look back and you're thankful for it.
That's it. You didn't always win as the younger brother, but I think it's one of those that it taught you to be tough. And I realized that 5 years was a good enough gap to where I could try to compete, and they were probably nice to me and let me play and didn't run over me, but it taught you to be tough and to figure out, what, it's not always going to come easy. You're not always going to win, but you got to show up and you got to play.
Okay, so I'm coming in as the older brother now. So you might have got it from your older brothers, but I got it from the parents. And I'm the one that broke the way and let the younger brothers have a little bit smoother sailing. So,
Yes. Thank you.
I love it. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, and my little brother, who's 6'9", is now my younger brother. So, yeah, not little brother. We're touching on the subject of multiple sports, and I am a huge fan of soccer. It was my first sport, because when I was 7, there really wasn't any other sports out there, and it was just brand new. As I mentioned to you earlier, Brian, I'm old. And so soccer in Southern California just really wasn't much of a thing, but it was really expanding in the suburbs. And so we got involved, and I was a goalie because I was kind of big and awkward.
Yeah.
And man, I thought I was the best goalie ever because I hardly let any goals go in until I realized it's because we had a guy named Pete Nyberg who played from the goal line to the goal line, scored all our points, and didn't let me touch the ball. I mean, the guy was phenomenal. And we went undefeated, and my dad thought he was the greatest soccer coach ever. He didn't know anything about the game at all. You know, here we are at Disney celebrating undefeated 7-year-old soccer. But I played it for 8 years. I was too big to play football. I would have aged up, you know, too many times. And I loved it. It was so fantastic for me down the road with coordination and running and hand-eye foot type things for being a taller, awkward kid. So we always encourage people, young people specifically, to take on multiple sports. I think it's great.
It's huge. And soccer, I thought was, you know, football has different dynamics to it. You know, I played a little bit of football and almost kind of moved into more of that kicker role after I'd done running back and realized like you can run only so fast and then you run into bigger players and you're like, they're still going to tackle me and it's going to hurt. Yeah. Like soccer, at least the slide tackle, not as bad. But I found soccer, once you move up and you get to the full 11v11, there is a lot of core leadership principles on that smaller, usually a squad is, you know, 16 to 20 players, and goalkeepers especially, you're almost the on-field coach. And so you learn leadership at an early age and motivation. And you know, you got team members as you get older, high school and college, that get into all kind of stuff, right? And you got to show up to a game and make sure, especially for the boys, that they're paying attention and they're in the zone to play. Well, if you're missing one of those players, you're out.
Talking about that leadership, you won 3 state championships in high school and you were the MVP honors. So that leadership obviously played a huge role in that high school chapter of your life. Go into that more and being a leader of that team, what that looks like compared to now.
Yeah, so that was such a great experience. I was fortunate. We had one of the best high school teams, I think, probably across the country at that point. We actually had, I want to say 4 or 5 people at some point all went and played professionally that were all together, which is in high school. That's just, you don't really see that as much anymore. A lot of players today even opt out and don't play high school. They'll play club and travel and ECNL and all. But I started when I was almost the younger brother again, right? So the freshman year, sophomore year, and we had guys that modeled that leadership for us that, you know, you showed up early, you stayed late. We needed to work on things. You know, we showed up with an intensity and we were committed to play. We had fun, but they would always, I just remember, would kind of lead by example and the extra effort and the things they did. And so as I moved through classes, you know, freshman, sophomore, junior, when I became a junior, it's like, okay, now we've got to step up. These guys have graduated. They've moved on to college. We stepped up, but it was that culture that was creative of, you know, winning mindset. We were committed, you know, treated others with respect, all those things you kind of learn. And I realized for me at an early age was like, I really like this leadership spot because I felt like I could influence and impact not only people, but the game. And you could make an impact on the game just with, as a goalkeeper, you're not going to touch the ball all that much. And I played field and goalie in high school, but you've got to realize where can I contribute to the team? Where does the team need me? And I learned that at an early age is sometimes the team needs you in a different position on the field. Maybe the team needs you to be that one that encourages somebody. Let's call it what it is. Maybe you don't start that game because someone else is better suited, but you still got to be a leader as you go through, and tons of lessons. But man, we had fun. We like to win.
Well, and so you've touched on some things that Tim and I in some of our interviews we've also touched on as a subject, and that is there's so many facets that can be learned by participating in sports. Yeah. There's so many things if you're paying attention, and you may not necessarily know it while you're going through it, especially as a young person, but inevitably they'll kind of resonate and come out. On the other hand, from the top down, unfortunately, we're seeing some of that go away. And the point I was making is I don't want to go too much into the sport dynamic and everything that's happening actually today, but as sports, you know, professional sports as a whole. When I played professionally with the Seahawks, I played with a guy by the name of Steve Largent, who, for all intents and purposes, was the best receiver, especially at that time, and still considered one of the best receivers ever. And in his 17th season or whatever it was, and held every record, that guy would catch a ball, he'd put the ball down, and he'd come back to the huddle and congratulate his team, and it was about the team, and it was about everybody supporting each other. And he was the premier example of leadership, and he walked the walk, and he did it, and what a shame it is today that when a guy makes a play, I mean, he's getting paid $14 million, catch the darn ball.
To make the play.
But then to run 10 more yards down the field and make a thing and look at my number, and then the teammates come to congratulate him, they push him away.
Yeah.
I'm losing a little bit of what I think sport is, and I hope it doesn't transcend down to really the core of sports, and that's the camaraderie and the selflessness and all of those things about bettering each other and lifting each other up. When somebody makes a mistake, there's nothing better than have a teammate, pat you on the back and say, "It's all right, man. We'll get it next time."
That's right.
And if you learn to carry that over into your personal life and professional life, people are going to make mistakes, and guess what? The next one might be yours. So be careful how you treat people, and in sports, you learn all those things.
It's changed. And I think you hit on a couple things that I noticed, and with 3 young kids from 5 to almost 12, and then my oldest, she's 13, is really teaching them that as you're part of a team now, right? If you want to be an individual sport player, there are individual sports out there for you, right? Like you could go pick those. But if you're part of a team, trying to teach them that at an early age, and I found it only takes a few players to lead that example and let everybody know that, the team doesn't win with any individual, and they don't lose because of one individual, right? I mean, that's not how life works. That's not how business works today on our teams now. That's not how the rest of their life will be. So the sooner we can get those lessons to our kids, the better they will be. Because when they show up and get a job later on, whether self-employed or part of a large organization, they're never going to have success just because of themselves, and they're never going to fail just because of themselves. And they got to realize that. And that's the life lessons. I know, we've got a great program here with youth soccer, and it's Tennessee Soccer Club here. And these guys, they're doing a great job of getting the right coaches on the field to teach these kids, not just soccer, but lessons.
That's the big thing. And I don't want to skip the other chapters. I want to touch on everything else that we have a part of your story, but you came back and coached after you were done playing. And I think that's so important, man, to have someone who's done it, who's traveled the journey, and then to teach the youth, like you're saying, these lessons of commitment and teamwork and discipline, accountability. It paves the way and sets a foundation that when they do get older, that they remember these lessons.
Yes.
And it changes the trajectory of people's lives.
100%. I feel like it was almost my way of giving back to the coaches that sacrificed, and even my parents that sacrificed. Now I can look back and see the sacrifices during the moment. Let's be real. You're a kid, you're showing up practice, you're having fun, like you're playing games, like you don't recognize sacrifices that are happening around you. Now you realize how hard it is if you're a coach to show up, how really the little pay is, unless you're in the professional leagues, right? Or collegiate level. And I feel like that's my way to be able to give back from the experiences I had and taking all of those great coaches. And I look at this was, if I were to have 5 or 10 great coaches and I could encapsulate all of the lessons they gave me, and now I can give those, like I'm a 10x kind of leader or 5x kind of leader of, I can share all of that years of my experience with the kids. And that's what I should do. That's the way to keep the sport alive and to keep it real and not become about an individual. It's about a team.
Yeah, I agree. I think coaching is one of the most rewarding things that a person can do, and be that example. And I did the same thing that you did, and was able to do it on a volunteer basis at a varsity level, and donate the stipend back to the program. And I just wanted to be there. And I'll tell you, boy, I couldn't wait to get to practice every day.
Yep.
And it was nice to be in control of my schedule that allowed me to donate or designate 20 to 25 hours a week to do that.
Sure.
And I can't wait to do it again. It is so fulfilling. Hey, we always ask, and I don't know if it's applicable or not, but, so you're a little older, you're now, have a wife and kids and a career, and through your travels, have you had a period where, your faith was tested, or that you maybe fell away from faith? We've had guests share that they absolutely did. I did. And so, you know, or did you have something that persevered or faith pulled you through? And if you could share that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think for all, like, we probably all had those moments where you look back, and one of the toughest seasons for us was during the collapse, being in the housing industry. And we were actually in Florida in 2006 when there's like it just, in 2007, the collapse that no one saw coming, and you're riding this wave and everything's going exceptionally well. And we were just having our firstborn at that time in 2007. And to go into a market that collapses, and you're looking around, I'd gotten laid off, position eliminated. We're in Florida. We're originally from Tennessee, so we've got no family, right? Already have my daughter. We were pregnant with our second, back to back almost. And I'll tell you, that's when you start questioning, like, what am I doing? And, you know, you're chasing money and success, and you realize, so I definitely had periods where it's like, okay, God, what are you trying to teach me? Like, what did I do wrong? And it was, I don't know that I would call it a falling out of faith, but questioning almost like who I am and like what my purpose was, and like where this fit in, because no one gets married and has kids and thinks it's going to happen to them, right? Like you just don't think that you're going to have your job eliminated, you know, house, like all that stuff just collapses in the market. And you look up and you're like, well, what's it all for? Like, what have I done? Like, why am I being punished? And you're like, God, why me? So I would say that was one of the seasons that tested me. We were fortunate though, in that we had joined a church there, and I played bass guitar. And that's probably one of the things I look back and go, I think truthfully, the reason that I learned to play music at an early age and learned to play bass was probably to save me through some of those years, because I was plugged into a band, which was fun, and it tapped into my kind of creative side, and I wasn't playing sports anymore. And so it almost kept me connected to a team, which was the praise and worship band. Had I not been doing that, I would have been like off, who knows, drinking, doing the things that most men do when they hit stress levels of that. And so I think that was the first time that it was tested. And I can look back now and say it wasn't pretty, but thank goodness I have an amazing wife that stood beside me. And I'm glad we both were believers, because had one of us not been a believer, I think it could have been much worse for us both. And so I'd say that was something I look back. And then the second one was with a different organization that I was around a bunch of, and we probably see this as you're walking in faith and you have other believers that, let's call it what it is. There's no believer that's perfect. And I got burned pretty bad by somebody that I trusted. And I hadn't been hurt that bad by another person that I had put so much kind of trust and all that into. And I can look back now and say, maybe that was God testing me, saying, why are you putting your faith into these men on earth? Like, your strength comes from me. And I realized I was putting my career, maybe money, all these things in there. I was looking up to these guys in positions, and maybe it was a lesson. And I learned through that. Yeah, I was reading the book Extreme Ownership, if you guys have read it.
No.
Oh, number one book I would encourage people. It was by Navy SEALs, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And I realized it was the woe is me pity party. Like, I was not taking ownership of who God created me to be. I was basically saying all these other things were other people's issues and problems, and they were trying to hurt me. And again, it was not putting my full faith in God, right? And we go half in, and I just don't think that's what he's called us to do. And so those were two pivotal moments that I think, you know, I'm 43 now, but I think those were times that I can look back and go, that was God strengthening me and putting me through a storm to make sure I knew like exactly where my foundation was.
Well, you know, it's funny. You touched on a couple of things in your stories, and it isn't always apparent at the time as to why certain things are happening, but the ability to look back and learn the lesson, right?
Yeah.
And that's you know, that's some insight, that's wisdom, and you only gain wisdom through God. But to look back and, okay, why was I part of a band? You know, I mean, you know, rock and roll or playing a bass guitar, but boy, you know what, you're right. It played a role that you didn't even know it was playing at the time, but to look back and recognize that. And when we're able to look back and recognize the things that we are learning and that they were God things and for a reason, it then makes us more aware of the current situations that may arise. And okay, and then instead of the stress, it's okay, what's the lesson?
Yes.
What am I learning? I know whatever it is, it's going to be, it's going to be your plan. But what am I supposed to be learning here? Rather than, why is that guy doing that?
Yeah. And we took some language of why is this happening to me, and shifting that to what's happening for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back to guys like, I mean, you're a pretty strong guy. I can, it's one of those, you don't get stronger doing comfortable workouts and just staying in a zone that isn't pushing you to a limit. And so I think your faith's the same way. You got to treat it the same way as spirituality, your mental capacity, your physical capacity, all those. And we get tested, and we should be prepared to be tested. I don't think in the Bible there's nowhere that says it's going to be an easy life, right? Like
it doesn't say it doesn't say if, it says when.
Right.
Yep.
That's it. And just to prepare, and that's some of the stuff I'm learning. And I don't know what God's preparing me for, but I can look back on those now. And you're right, in the moment, I mean, lots of tears shed. You question a whole lot of stuff, but it's that old adage, almost what doesn't break you, actually, it does make you stronger. And then I feel like you can build upon that and then share those stories with others that you can impact them in their storm in that season. Right. Because there's plenty of people around us that are going through something. We just may not know it.
Yep.
Right.
I love that. Yeah. I love that word, just preparing, you're preparing yourself for that future, and then somebody else who might be going through something similar. So yeah, that's so important. I want to go back real quick because I don't want to jump over your college career and your pro career. Can you just touch base a little bit on that as well? What role that faith played in, as you get older, the competition gets better. The more expectations there are of you, the more responsibility you take on. So that a lot of our listeners are younger people making those transitions. Just talk about that, please.
Yeah. So college was different for me. And I actually was signed to go to a different college. I was going to go to UConn, and then the college coach retired. And it shifted for me, and it just wasn't the right fit anymore. And then there were two other schools, and it was kind of weird how I look back now and it's orchestrated that I was from Memphis and I got to stay in Memphis. And for me, one of the priorities was I wanted to have a chance to compete to start my freshman year. When I started ranking, and that's probably important for any high school athletes, is there's no perfect school to go to. Everybody's like, oh, you got to go ACC, or you got to go top 10, or you got to do all that. And I had options, but I ranked mine. And one of those was I wanted to play. I'm a competitor. And I know for me, getting the time on the field was something that I wanted. And I wanted great coaching. I wanted a goalkeeper coach there. I wanted a strength coach there. And I felt like my foundation with my family wasn't a bad thing. It was actually a good thing for me. And so I thought, well, if I can go to Memphis and get all of that. So what that did create, though, is I had my friends that hadn't graduated, still in high school. You have your friends that many, many more of them went to college, not playing sports, out partying, out not showing up to class, don't care about their grades, because if they fail out, it's not like they're going to miss games like we would. We had to hold a certain GPA. What I can look back on is a couple things I would advise that really helped me. One, we did have kind of like the tutoring set up, right? Because we're athletes and you're traveling so much. Taking my schoolwork seriously was something that paid off. And then I tried to surround myself. I started learning in college. Who you start surrounding yourself with in college is absolutely going to shape and mold you for who you are in the future. And I started realizing that I wasn't the one that I wanted to stay out late and party. I wasn't the one that would show up to the parties and be the one that was doing all that. That was just something I had committed to sports and to show up and be my best. And man, you talk about being alienated, tough decisions. And I don't know that it was so much, I was a newer believer. And so maybe it was like, oh, do I drink? Do I not drink? Is it okay? Is it not okay? Like you have all this like battling in your head. But I realized for me, like my best wasn't showing up the next day after I'd gone out and partied. I just didn't like the way I woke up the next day. And so I kind of figured that out. So I would say faith played a role in it, because what I had started to learn, I was able then to still go to the church that we had been going to with our family. And they had a phenomenal college and youth group. And so again, music played a part. I was playing in the band. I got to meet some friends, and that kept me grounded, because college was a little bit overwhelming. Even being local is keeping up with sports, keeping up with all the classes you have, keeping up with just, you know what? Nobody's holding your hand to show up to class. Nobody's making sure your homework was turned in.
Right.
Nobody cares, right? And you realize really quickly that if you don't do that, fortunately, we had a coach that did care, and he would push us. but that was my first dose of reality. And I do think faith kind of played, I can look back now, a role of just me stepping back and realizing like, what's my life about? Like, what are my priorities? And I started to learn, like, here's what I value. I don't value these things as much. And I think what was cool is some of my friends that did go out and do that stuff, we were still friends. We still hung out. We went to the games together. It just didn't mean I needed to partake in all of that. Like for me, it was, I wanted to be my best and I wanted to be the best athlete I could be. And school didn't come super easy, you know? So it wasn't one of those where I was like, I could just show up and pass a test. I could just knock out, you know, finance and accounting tests. I had to study. And so that was my journey through college, which I would tell you 100% prepared me for. You're exactly right on this one. I mean, Tim, when you get to the pro levels, you talk about even more, people don't care. Like you show up, you're the rookie. And I remember I went out and trained with the Colorado Rapids. And so they're an MLS team, you guys probably know. And there were some guys on there that are pros, like veterans. They don't care that the rookie shows up and wants to make the team. They don't care about anything about that. And there were a couple guys that I remember really kind of leaned into me. Fortunately, one was a believer and kind of taught me a little bit about like money at that point. Like, hey, don't spend the money because you're not making any, right? And then it was just, how could I be an example? And we had a couple guys on the team. What I found is you can trust your spirit. You're going to find believers on every team. I found there's a couple guys on there and you'll know who they are. And so I tried to lean in to like make connections with them and what could I learn and grow as a person. So the pro ranks, it only got tougher, right? Because the demands are there. Whereas I would tell you in high school and college, you're still competing, but when you move to that next level, you're in the top 1%, top 2. I mean, it is right, everybody's fast, everybody's strong, everybody's smart. What's going to make you different? And it's a lot up here.
Yeah, you know, I'm so glad you agreed to come on the show. You've shared a lot of things. You know, it's funny too. Even your decision or the way you ended up in Memphis wasn't your plan. Wasn't where you wanted to go, but you were guided there. I remember walking onto campus. I was offered scholarships at Cal and U of A, and I remember walking on campuses going, "Holy smokes, these guys are men!"
Yeah.
And I want to play eventually, and so I chose San Diego State. You know, and it worked out, but it wasn't. You know, I mean, being a young person, I mean, it very easily could have gone saying, "Boy, man, I get to be a Pac-10 or whatever it is." Was it Pac-10 then? It was a long time ago. You know, I'm gonna try and force it, and I didn't, and I was blessed. But hey, we got to wrap up. I want you to tell everybody where they can find you. You've got a podcast. You work for a tremendous company. Loan Depot is. We know a lot of people in the higher tiers of that company. Great faith-based lending company. Tell people where they can find you, and then we're going to wrap things up.
Dude, this has been awesome. Thank you, guys. And yeah, you can definitely follow along in the journey. I share a lot on Instagram, and it's just the Brian Covey. So easy to find. And then on LinkedIn, Brian Covey there. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter. Those are both, you can find me again with Brian Covey. Those are pretty simple. Or you can just go to www.briancovey.com. You'll find all the podcast links and everything there. And that has been one. If you enjoyed some of the stuff we covered today, you'll love that there. We have a lot of athletes, a lot of leadership, a lot of people just making a difference in the world that I have guests come on and share. So they'll be pretty inspiring for you if you've enjoyed this.
Cool. And now this is Tim's role. Tim, tell people where they can find us.
Yes, make sure you're following us on Instagram at Mission Sports Network, as well as YouTube and Facebook, guys. Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate your insight of the journey. And that's, you know, as we do these things, we're all on a journey, and we have these parts where we intersect, and the part is to build each other up, you know, to help each other cross over that path and to level up and elevate. So thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. You're doing some awesome work. I'm going to be supporting you, cheering you on. I can't wait to see what you do in the lives you impact.
Yeah, that's great. And like I said, it's been a pleasure meeting you. I'm so glad we got. And
appreciate it, brother.
Wait, I didn't figure out yet. You can't say stuff. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we can say it. You edit that part.